Hey guys, Coach Pillowfist here. So I know some of you guys are curious to know a little more about my boxing background and everything, so here it finally is. My name is Mexi-Kim. I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska. So, I started off a big part of my childhood through high school. I was a wrestler. When I was about 13 years of age, I became interested in Muay Thai, so I started self-training it because we didn't really have Muay Thai gyms in Alaska at the time. So when I was about 14, I had this friend that took me over to a boxing gym because I was like, well, this is the closest thing that I can get to Muay Thai, right? From there, I just started falling in love with boxing. Unfortunately, we didn't have an amateur or professional boxing program in Alaska, and still to this day, I don't think they have that. So we only had this kind of Toughman competition type of thing run by businessmen where basically you show up to their weigh-in and you get matched up with some other guy that shows up that day. You fight and you get a $150 paycheck. There is a shortage of good fighters in Alaska, so a lot of people on these cards were just atrocious fighters. But this was the only thing that was available to me at the time. So when I was 16, I walked up in there and got matched up with some 24-year-old dude. And on fight night, they just announced me as 18 years old. So I was just 18 years old for like 2 or 3 years. My highlights are actually still up on YouTube if you search TKB Alaska Boxing in case you're interested. So TKB was my nickname, it stands for the Korean Bowl. So a lot of people just knew me by TKB. So my first coach in Alaska was kind of a madman, very old school. Technical coaching was almost non-existent. I didn't know anything about defense. All he taught me was punch, 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 power, power, power. He was Korean, former Korean featherweight champion, Asian Pacific lightweight champion. This was like way back in the days, He used to run up mountains and literally punch trees in Korea, so that should explain why he was such a madman. Then in 2010, I moved to Tucson, Arizona, where I was finally introduced to a real boxing scene. I was like the only Chino fighting in these events, I had a Mexican gym, Mexican teammates, Mexican coach, Mexican sparring partners, Mexican opponents, and now I've got a Mexican girlfriend. You see how boxing works? I went on to fight about 18 amateur fights with my coach in Arizona, so plus the Toughman fights, I had about 25 fights total. At some point I had too many distractions, I was going to college at the time, so you guys know where that goes. In 2015, I became a boxing instructor at this like fitness boxing type of gym. Around the same time that I was a boxing instructor, I wanted to commit back to boxing, but I wanted to go pro already, I didn't want to go to the amateur boxing scene again. But if you really want to box seriously, then spend as much time in the amateurs as possible, don't be like me. I was 24 years old thinking that I was too old and I just needed to go pro already. No, that's the wrong way to think about it. You gotta get as much amateur experience as possible before you guys go pro. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to go pro already. I told my coach, find me a professional debut. So I had just graduated college. I was doing real estate at the time. I was a boxing instructor. But after I taught my classes, I would go to my coach's gym to go train for my professional debut and get in my sparring and everything. Then I'd go back to the boxing gym that I was teaching at, but eventually everything that was going in my life became too much, so I decided not to pursue the professional debut anymore. And in 2017, I moved to Las Vegas. So I came to Las Vegas to help my family start a business, taking care of elderly people. But sometime along the way, my interest in fighting again just kind of crept up on me. So I went to the Mayweather gym for a few months where I was trained by Jeff Mayweather. I went in there and I told Jeff, I got 25 fights in the amateurs. I'm trying to go pro as soon as possible. Get me over there, Now you would think the people in there were assholes because of the reputation that they have at the Mayweather gym, but everybody in there was actually really cool, I really appreciate everybody there for being as welcoming as they were to me. At some point, I officially decided I wasn't going to pursue boxing as a career anymore. I think my brain took too much damage over all the years of boxing, and so I don't spar, I don't fight, but what better way to be involved in the sport than to teach it on YouTube, right? The first thing I was thinking was, who's gonna want to learn from me when you got Tony Jeffries over there and, other legit coaches that are actually teaching it on YouTube? I was thinking all the negative thoughts, like people are gonna talk shit on the comment section and all the big YouTubers have already done videos on everything, this and that. So I looked up YouTube videos from other YouTube coaches and I was thinking, you got some people that don't even know what they're talking about and they got all these views and likes and subscribers. You got some people that actually know what they're talking about, but they say the most cookie cutter information, like you could just find that on Google. And then you got the better YouTube channels, but even with them, like I know they know more than what they're actually telling you guys. Like I don't know if they're just holding it back because they're trying to sell it or what, but that's what I'm here for, to teach you guys everything that I know, not trying to mislead you, not trying to hold anything back. So after having having 3 different coaches, I've learned that just because a coach says you should do it a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way. My first coach taught me the leaping left hook, and so I had a very bad habit of leaping with my hooks. I wanted to be like Mike Tyson. My second coach told me, stop leaping with your hooks. It was like such a bad habit that I had. With my head movement, usually I move my head like this. But Jeff Mayweather told me, keep them glued to your face, don't move them like this. But then you see a lot of other fighters like Canelo or Jaron Ennis, they do this style. So why is that the only way that you should move your head? So all 3 of these coaches, they're good coaches, but they all had stuff that they taught me that conflicted with one another. So do what works for you. Boxing technique is not a one-size-fit-all type of thing. Everybody does things differently. Just because Freddie Roach teaches it a certain way doesn't mean all the other ways are wrong. You could be a pressure fighter, counter puncher, outboxer, Cuban style, Mexican style, Russian style. Everybody does things differently. The sky is the limit. Do what works for you. I'll tell you one thing though, my first coach allowed me to utilize the hitman stance very early on, and that was extremely detrimental. If you're just learning how to box, make sure you get the basics down first before you move on to the shoulder roll or the hitman stance and things like that. Because I sacrificed a lot of brain cells trying to learn all this fancy because I sacrificed a lot of brain cells trying to learn all this fancy schmancy. Because I sacrificed a lot of brain cells trying to do all this fancy. Because I sacrificed a lot of brain cells trying to do all this fancy. Because I sacrificed a lot of. Because I sacrificed a lot of brain cells trying to learn all this fancy smanchy stuff very early on in learning how to box. Now, some casual facts about me. I like to eat food, go to restaurants, eat the food that my girlfriend cooks, watch fights on the weekends, Latin dance. My favorite type of music, I like reggaeton, cumbia, bachata, rap, R&B. My favorite food right now, man, I like all types of food. I don't discriminate, but I really like Colombian food and soul food. And sushi, you can't forget about sushi. My favorite fighter is Canelo. I know there's a lot of haters of Canelo, say all you want in the comment section, alright? Lastly, I just wanted to apologize if you guys have video requests that still haven't been made yet. I'm trying to get there as soon as possible. I'm a one-man team right now. I work 45 hours a week. I do all of my own cinematography, thumbnails, recording, I do all of that. So, I'm trying to get to everything as soon as possible. But other than that, I appreciate every one of you guys, all of you guys that are in the comment section and stuff. I really appreciate everything that you guys say. I'm just like, man, it makes me feel great, that you guys are here watching me and subscribing to me and showing your support. Like each and every one of you guys, man. Awesome. So stay tuned for the next video. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.